Hello, Rachel.
Hello, Ryan. How are you?
I'm feeling like I'm in a dream within a dream. I feel like I'm in this matrix of some sort of simulation, dare I say. How are you feeling?
Full of milk and cookies.
Yum yum, as Commander Nandi from Star Trek Discovery would say to that notion. Rachel, we are the YumYumPodcast. This is our show YumYum5, in which we are rewatching episodes of Babylon 5 from a spoilerific perspective. That's right, we are rewatching, so that does mean spoilers, people. If you have not watched the show, especially in context with this episode, we're going to be busting this wide open. Go elsewhere. Actually watch the show. That's it. You've been told. We're Yum Yum because of the iconic line from Star Trek Discovery, a show that we used to cover and we will cover in the future, where a character out of nowhere said Yum Yum. Rachel, I know it's a tough question, because Nagrath is not in this episode, but who would say Yum Yum in this episode? Out of all the characters, who would be saying Yum Yum here?
I don't know.
You don't? I think I know. It's a tough one, because we want to say Knight too, because he said the milk and cookies line. But to me, it's Benson. Benson had that energy.
Him, and I was just like, I don't know. I feel like he would, but I don't feel like he has occasion to say it.
He's death. He should have got shot and said, yum yum, and then roll over and die. That is that. But we are joined by someone. We got a guest for this episode, Rachel. We've been having a few guesting things going on recently.
But
so it's
I have a condition.
Okay.
This guest has to say his full name when he introduces himself.
Middle?
Yep.
All right, you've been, let's just get into it. We are joined by my fellow podcasting host from my film podcast, Spit and Polish Presents. Bartek is here, people. If you listen to my show, everyone's been clamoring, when's Bartek going to get on the Yum Yum? When's he going to get the Yum Yum treatment? Well, I dragged him in. I dragged Bartek in, kicking and screaming. But here he is. Hello, Bartek.
I'm not the co-host
of this show?
No. What's your full name, though? I think you can remember that.
Well, I had a Babylon 5 joke to say first, but if you really insist, my full name is Bartłomiej Piotr Kasprzyszak.
Yeah, and what was your Babylon 5 reference to kick us off with?
Okay, I'll go back to what I said before. I'm not the co-host.
No.
My mind is blown, and now there's a hole in it.
It's shattered, and he could die.
It's dangerous. It could shatter his mind or kill him. Then he dies.
So yeah, we host, Bartek and I, for those who don't know, Spit and Polish Presents. We talk about movies. We talk about movies that come recommended. We've done commentary tracks for movies. We've talked about some TV shows occasionally. We've talked about random movies that we found secondhand, and that's where the B5 connection is the strongest, wouldn't you say, Bartek?
Oh boy, yes.
Do you want to kind of touch upon that for people?
So, we have a monthly show that we haven't done in a long time due to real-life complications called The Mystery Box.
No, the real-life complications is COVID, but our show's called The Mystery Box, just so people know.
Yes, COVID is the complication. I think we can all agree with that. So on The Mystery Box, we find random DVDs. They could be movies, they could be TV shows, they could be mysterious projects. And we've had a real series of incidences in which Ryan notices Babylon 5 actors in them.
Whether they direct them or star in them or direct and star in them, there's been a few too many. And it was like a running thing where it's like, that guy's in B5, that woman's in B5, this prop is in B5. I'm not that level yet, but one day maybe. And you would just kind of roll your eyes and go, oh God, you could just say anyone's in B5 and it will be probably true. I wouldn't know for a fact.
Ryan, you really tell me this bug guy's in B5?
Yeah, well, no, Nagrath does appear in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. If we ever watch Buffy, I could give that as a fact, but...
You did do the film version of Buffy.
He wasn't in the film version, he was in the TV show version, but Bartek, that's kind of indicating you didn't have a history when we did the mystery box with Babylon 5, but what's your history with it now? Has that changed? Do you have a relationship with it outside of me just going, that person's in Babylon 5, and you look at me like, I don't know what that is?
Well, for a long time, that was my only history with it, but, because you're such a strong champion of this show, you've talked about it a lot, and you've always mentioned that you'd really like me to check it out, and, this year, for the past couple of months, that push has come to shove, and I've watched it all. I just, about a week ago, maybe 6 days ago, finished season 5, so I watched it all.
Yeah, so when you first got pushed in by me to watch it, did you actually know all that much about the show and what was going to be waiting for you? Or was it just that you knew that I liked it?
I would say that I had a stronger idea of, what Star Trek was, which, it's people on a... Maybe this is going to be funny for people, but people on a ship going on missions and, there's a bunch of intelligent conversations, stuff like that. And because I didn't really have a strong idea of what Babylon 5 was, I just figured, it will be like that, but slightly different. So when I watched The Gathering and, it was a, space station with 250,000 people with, essentially, a city in space, that actually kind of threw me off. Okay, this is a lot different.
And it was the UN in space too.
Yeah, I think because you talked a lot about a lot of Franklin episodes and about how there were all these moral dilemmas, I thought it was going to be kind of similar to what I think Star Trek is like, which a lot of characters talking to each other, coming up with ideas.
So then you saw the show, and it wasn't necessarily that. It's kind of how would you give a brief description of what Babylon 5 is and what it's been to you?
Yeah, so obviously every episode starts with the intro speech. Every season has a different one. And the first season one really kind of defines it all. It's this is humanity's last hope for peace. This is the mission of the station. And there are, troubles that happen and we just have to deal with them. And, most episodes seem to have a sort of, moral dilemma or sort of message that they really want to hammer home. I remember the first 2 episodes, kind of hit that really hard, where the first episode was, this kind of political struggle between the Narn and the Centauri and everyone else who, has to deal with that because they're on Babylon 5 as well. And then the second one kind of got into more religious stuff.
Yeah, with the soul. Ooh. So you have finished it, and this is, in a way, a week ago. Now you're revisiting Babylon 5 a week later because I wanted you on for an episode, and I wanted you on for the one we'll be talking about, which is episode 8, And the Sky Full of Stars, from season 1, of course. And I've got the DVD summary right here in front of me because IMDb is too weak while the DVD summaries are perfect. And again, I don't know who wrote these summaries, so I'm going to have to assume it was JMS because he really had his hands on board for the writing in a lot of ways. Eventually, he would just write every episode of the show. But so let's hear what this has to say, and let's think that the guy who wrote this episode wrote this synopsis for the episode. It goes as such. What happened when Sinclair blacked out while leading his fighter squad during the fierce Earth-Minbari War? The answer is so vital to an Earth-based supremacist group that it sends 2 covert knights to cyberlock onto the commander's memories. I gotta say, that has been the most upfront, logical, and coherent summary we've had. That is exactly what this episode is. That didn't seem as silly as previous ones we've done. That is the plot. Rachel, what has been your relationship and history with this particular episode, and what did you think about it, revisiting it for now?
I remember when I watched it the first time, and I delusionally thought we were going to get some answers. And I was wrong.
No, just we got some answers. Delenn was involved.
Yeah, but we already kind of knew that.
Did we? Now we have a concrete answer, though.
We have a concrete answer, which just raises more questions. yes. Really.
So you remember just being like frustrated because you wanted the goods.
Yeah.
In episode 8.
Like, what the fuck? But I think I was expecting more answers because I knew that Sinclair was only in this season. So I was just like, oh, okay, we're going to get maybe not the whole thing, but
enough.
But we'll get more of a solid idea, and then, like, you know, they'll wrap it up in the season finale.
Yeah.
Which is not what happened.
No, it doesn't happen like that. I, of course, as everyone knows, and if you have not listened to the show, this is going to be new for you. People who have, this is an old drum. Bartek, this is an old drum for you too. I own the DVD.
I haven't listened to the show.
No, but you've heard this in real life. I've had the DVDs, but I was stuck with season 1 for 3 or 4 years before seeing season 2. So I am very familiar with this season. And so I've seen this episode multiple times, and I have always taken it for granted, because I also knew that Sinclair was only in this one season. And I took it for granted because I liked the aliens, because the aliens were different to characters that I've seen before, or they were fully formed in a way, while Sinclair, this is like, he's a mystery, like this is a part of his characters, there's a mystery here. Well, I liked the clarity of Londo's whole tragedy and clownishness, and I liked the explosive charm of Jakar, or I liked the real alienness of Kosh and Delenn. So I was always drawn to those things. So I always took this episode for granted. Now, in previous rewatches over the last couple of years, I have really grown to love Sinclair in particular out of our human characters, and this episode has always been the shining example of what you could do with this character and this actor. And I've understood why people really like this episode. I've never disliked it, I just always took it for granted. And I also took it for granted because we find out his whole story, and then it's like, well, he's not the main character anymore once we find out his whole story. So this episode kind of feels like it's important, but not as important because of the production reasons of him not being the lead character anymore. But rewatching it for this, I was gripped. I found myself really excited too, because this is the first real episode we've covered in which it's all A plot, no B plot. Every other extra thing in here is all about Sinclair. Ivanova, Garibaldi, Delenn, Franklin. It's all about getting Sinclair, and it's not a distracting B-plot. Like, I liked Mind War, for example, but we had the Catherine Sakai thing, and that's just a B-plot on its own. I really appreciate that this is the first real episode in which it's just one plot. It's really focused. It's focused on lore and character. I think it finds a great balance between the two. Bartek, what was your relationship with this episode when you first watched it, and how it landed in the run of episodes that you were watching at the time?
Yeah, it's interesting hearing your history there, Ryan, because you mentioned that you were really drawn to the aliens at first. And I remember when I started, one of the big things was that I really enjoyed, like, the episodes that all the ambassadors were in. I think maybe by the time I got to this point, I'd kind of mellowed out a little bit on that, but it definitely, the fact that this is an episode, you know, without Londo, without Kosh, without Jakar, it really sticks out when you consider that this is, like, you know, a huge main plot episode. And I do, eventually when I came across the season, I did grow to have Sinclair as my favorite character, and I even kind of, you know, carried that on into season 2. I think that came a bit after this episode, but definitely during this episode, I was starting to see, you know, a lot more to Sinclair. Because I remember when I watched The Gathering, you know, still trying to find my footing in what I think about this series, you know, what I think about all the characters, and Sinclair just seemed to me, you know, based on my memory, as this kind of smiling, charming main character guy until kind of near the end of that pilot film. And then when the series started, that sort of continued, but not as much. And then in this episode, where we have, you know, generally an interrogation plot, we are literally diving deep into this character, diving deep into his insecurities. And, like both of you have said, we're starting to get some answers, and and it takes quite a while, into this episode for Sinclair to truly, take some interest in finding those answers. Because, as much as, this is an interrogation of our main character who we like and we don't like that this is happening to it, I think literally everyone in real life and in the show other than the Minbari also want the answers.
Yeah, and I think that is what makes the antagonist so interesting, because there comes a point where the antagonist has let go of this idea that he betrayed Earth, and now he's just invested in finding out the answer because he realizes Sinclair doesn't know the answer. And he's like, don't you want to know? And in a way, he kind of flips into being, he's still antagonist, but he kind of flips into being a guide for him.
Yeah, because he also realizes, wait, if I can make him want to go there, this is going to go much easier.
Yeah, instead of like hurting him. How was it revisiting this episode, Bartek? I mean, you just finished the season... the series a week ago. This is one that you watched months ago now. And like you said, Sinclair was a character you held in your heart for a while, but you had to let him go at some point. And so what was it like to come back and see this, and especially in the context of what the answers are?
Yeah, well, having finished the entire show, I also see this episode as almost the start of a trilogy of 3 specific episodes, a later one in season 2 and a later one in season 4 of like interrogation episodes. And I see a real kind of a development in style of doing these kind of episodes, looking at them in chronological order, where in the very first one, this one, we have the interrogator character, because all 3 of these episodes have an interrogator character who, as menacing as he is, he doesn't seem as capable as the later 2 ones. He gets stressed out. There's a time pressure going on. He relies on technology for about 75% of, 50-75% of the time. He's getting nowhere until near the end, where he becomes, like Rachel said, the kind of guide character. And yeah, that was really interesting to see again. Like this interrogation that wasn't as intense as what comes much later. But it's handled in a very different way from what they do later on.
Go to hell. I don't have to tell you a thing, and I'm betting you don't have a lot of time. Security's probably turning this place upside down looking for me.
Assuming you're still on Babylon 5. Assuming we hadn't taken you somewhere else. But you're right. You don't have to tell me anything.
I think out of the 3, though, this is the most direct about exploration of the actual character being interrogated, while the other 2, it does feel like, with the Jack the Ripper one, we're actually learning more about himself, the interrogator. And in the 4th season one, it's about the ideology of Earth as well. And the conflicting ideology that Sheridan has with that as well. Well, here, you don't... the point is, you don't get to know who the interrogator is. We never find out his name. He's just Knight 2. And then he's completely erased personality-wise by the end. And, well, he remembers that... I gotta say, it's corny. I've never liked it. I have 2 things I really hate in this episode, and that's one of them, which is we're still stuck in... We could still be stuck in here. No. That's too much. You did a bad job there. I fucking hate that. And like one of the other things, I mean, there's
like we need a stinger.
Yeah, we need a stinger. And the other one I hate is how and why is there a Grey Council member waiting in Delen's room when this incident only took place this morning? Like she would have had to call the Grey Council member to come over. And like, you know what I'm talking about? Like, there's not enough time for that guy to be there.
No, because. So Sinclair was missing for almost a whole day.
Yeah.
And then he was unconscious for a full day.
Yeah.
So
okay, fine. I'll allow it.
Because remember that the Grey Council is just floating around.
I just think it's kind of lazy that they have to reinforce with a guy that we don't know by being like, if he finds out, we kill him. And then it's even funnier when we know what the answer is. And it's like, no, you wouldn't. He's your Jesus.
Yeah.
He's your...
I was just like, how could you...
Yeah.
Could you imagine if they did kill him and they were like, oh, fuck, we killed Valen. What the fuck did we do? We don't have Valen anymore. What have we done
We
to the
ruined
timeline?
the timeline. Yeah. It's one of those funny things. There's just some corny things here.
Yeah. It's just like, okay, well, you're trying to up the stakes. Great.
We never see Delen's personal shower. He could have always been there.
Let's talk about one scene that I think is very fascinating upon the rewatch level, but also when a first-time viewer, this is one of the scenes that gives us a deep understanding of Dr. Franklin, because we've had the infection episode, but that didn't give us a really deep understanding of Franklin as a character, yet this conversation he has with Delen in this episode gave a much deeper understanding. A single scene gave us a deeper understanding than a whole episode we've had before. I want to talk about that scene with Franklin and Delen. Rachel, what is your relation, like, how do you feel about Dr. Franklin, and how did you feel when you kind of heard his backstory here, his background of hitchhiking and kind of being a real hippy-dippy doctor who gives it away for free, and then when the war came...
It ruined everything.
It ruined everything, and it tested him, and he refused. How do you feel about Franklin and all that?
I remember it took me a while to warm up to Franklin. Because I was just like, oh, but what is he doing here? Like, it felt almost like they were like, okay, well, we need a doctor character because, we're going to have to do medical story, so we need somebody that's in that field.
Yeah.
And then when we got to this episode, when I was watching it for the first time, I was like, I like this.
Yeah.
I like that they're still hitchhiking and that he's just trying to live his life and explore and doing it in a way that is entirely for his own curiosity.
Yeah.
It wasn't like...
Because he respects all life.
Yeah. It wasn't like I was trying to chart every species in this sector.
Yeah, so I could be the best doctor on Earth and get the head job.
I was exploring, and all that mattered was they were going somewhere that I hadn't been before. And I was just like, that sounds really cool. I wish that I could do that.
I remember I thought it was an interesting idea that he was a hitchhiking doctor character, because I, like many people, getting used to the interesting little details this show would put in, like the fact that we have homeless, the fact that in this episode we get introduced to like gambling and credits, and like why guards can't gamble too much, and like the corruption that would happen from that, and all these specific little details, and something like making him a guy who would just travel from place to place, and in a way he would encounter more aliens than someone like Sinclair had done in a lot of ways. Like he had met so many different things and different people along the way from that. And I fell in love with Franklin when I heard his war background story, because I didn't really know much about his convictions and ethics as a doctor character. But when I heard that speech, I'm like, okay, this is going to be a character who's going to get into a lot of head-on-head drama with other characters, because he doesn't have political sides, he doesn't have allegiances. All he cares about is life, which is further explored in a few episodes time from now, a couple of episodes time from now. But it is a consistent character trait for Franklin, is he loves his friends, but he is willing to go head to head with them if it interferes with his moral code as a doctor, which is to look out for all life. And I was wowed by that. And then Delen during the war, we can all talk about that in a second. But Bartek, what about you? How was your feelings about Franklin early on, and this kind of conversation when it popped up?
All the details still escape me, but I remember definitely his first 2 episodes, I was still trying to, grasp who this character was. And I know that by the end of the season, I had a stronger idea. And rewatching this episode, just now, pretty much that entire line he gives, the hitchhiking to the, I destroyed the records because it's part of his, code. It pretty much 100% matches the character at the end of the show.
Yeah.
It's like, that is Franklin. That line is very much Franklin. Like the hitchhiking, you can very much compare it to his walkabout plot that comes much later.
I love this conversation because we're learning a lot about Franklin, but the fact that Delenn doesn't tell us stuff tells us so much about her. Again, it ties into this early season thing, which I think we take for granted after having watched the entire show, that Delenn at the very beginning of the show in the first...
is shady as fuck.
And throughout the show, they will keep bringing that back to remind us, remember when Delenn was a full Mbryo? She was ambiguous, morally grey, outright bad at points. When she becomes hybrid, she's far more of a good person. But, you watch this early episode and you're like, that's right, Delenn was kind of leading us up to believe that she's an antagonistic character in some way, shape, or form, or she's got an agenda that we don't understand. And
that is true.
That is true. But I love seeing this conversation because her not telling us tells us so much.
And the way that she constructs her sentence and her meaning so carefully.
Because we read in a previous episode when she told Lanier not to call her Satai. And it's this very much construction. She's like, I've built this elaborate house of cards. I don't want you to touch it or it'll all collapse. And people realize that it was just a house of cards that I've constructed. Bartek, what do you think about this conversation with Delenn and what we're just talking about here?
I'm thinking about Delenn throughout the entire show, and definitely I've noticed that she is a character that likes to keep her secrets. And one of the big differences between Delenn in season 1 and Delenn further on is that further on, more often than not, we, the audience, are actually in on her secrets while other characters don't know them. Kind of bit of dramatic irony there. And it's insane how far that carries. Like, there are many moments where she gets caught out having kept a secret and she feels guilty, but then she'll just keep doing it over and over again throughout the show. With good intentions, obviously.
She always has her reasons.
Yeah, but then I just realized now that with what I said about us usually being in the know after season 2, the secret that she alludes to in that conversation is actually one that we are not privy on for a very long time.
We have to wait 3 more seasons to find out what she was up to during the war.
Yeah, and maybe I just missed it, but I felt like before I hit that point, I kind of thought I already knew everything. I guess I didn't consider that there is still just one major secret left, and it was a very, very big one.
And I think you take it for granted. We take it all for granted, because I remember that obviously the thing we're talking about is Delenn being a member of the Grey Council was the deciding vote to basically go on a holy war crusade, a genocidal war against the humans.
She made the war officially a holy war.
She was the one, and she did it out of anger.
Yes, her emotional state is, deciding vote and her emotional state.
Yes, and I think
she wanted that revenge.
I think we take it for granted in a lot of ways because we feel like, everything's been explained. We find out why they took Sinclair. We see Sinclair go back in time and make the whole entire timeline happen. We see her relationship with the warrior caste and the religious caste, and we just assume, she was on the Grey Council. We know that she was involved in the war. We see that she was the one that decided, let's pick him and abduct him. And you just go, okay, that was it, right? Of course, that was it. And then season 4 comes around and says, oh, no, buddy. She was in the Grey Council, though. Those guys run the Mbryo. They did retaliate with genocidal violence. And it then challenges you to be like, Delenn was a part of that. Let's actually explore what that would mean. One of our main characters who at that point in the show is one of the most lovable characters. She's very warm, and that by the time she's in a romantic relationship with one of our main characters. But if you remember her backstory and her whole thing, she was a ruling member of a government that almost made the human race extinct. And they say, let's explore that. And here you have in season 1 a line from her being like, I don't want to talk about that right now. And it hits all the harder when you rewatch it because you're like, oh, Franklin's here saying, I love life and I was morally right and I didn't want to hurt even you, the enemy. And we know during the war, she wanted to wipe us the fuck out.
What about you, Ambassador? What did you do during the war?
A topic for another time. Good day, Doctor.
So this A-plot, I've always enjoyed the fact that there was just this sci-fi plot of 2 guys come on the ship and invade our commander's mind and do matrixy things in his brain. I love the playing of the effects and the camera moves and the theatrical nature of like, he pops over here and he pops over there and he makes Sinclair imagine this and, hey, Commander! And like with Garibaldi, which is... Whenever I think of Garibaldi, I do think of the lines, hey, Commander, a lot, because he says it in the exact same way, almost identically the same way each time he pops in.
I have a similar thing, yeah.
Hey, Commander.
I remember when I watched this episode and you were asking me like, oh, so what do you think about, episodes you just watched? You asked me, oh, what did Garibaldi do in that episode? I'm like, oh, well, he got killed and then came back. And you started laughing at that. It's like, oh, Ryan really likes that.
Isn't it funny?
Yeah, it is.
Such a funny thing to write. Like, we could kill him many times if we want. Look, I could do it right now. Boom. And he's like, not my best friend, Michael Garibaldi.
And it's also oddly sad because then he does get shot.
Yeah, later in the show. Oh, that's something. We didn't talk about this in one of our previous discussions, but this is also fun on the rewatch. Garibaldi's right-hand man security guard guy was here in this episode, and he was just like being a normal, generic, no-name security guard guy. And that's fun to see on the rewatch, that the guy who would eventually shoot Garibaldi in the back, he has actually been seeded in the earlier episodes. He wasn't just like introduced in one episode. Like, he was in several episodes just as random security guy. How did you feel about seeing that on the rewatch, Bartek? Just the guy who shot Garibaldi just like walking around being like normal guy.
Yeah, it's been so long that I almost forgot about him, but as soon as I saw him, I'm like, oh yeah, he's the initial right-hand man, right?
Yeah, he's the original Zach Allen.
Mm-hmm.
And then he betrayed him because he's a secret insider Earth guy, which it's.
I thought you were going to call him an incel. Sorry.
He's an. Oh, yeah, sorry.
I thought the same thing.
He's an incel.
Hey, he might be.
I like too, though, if we want to postulate for a second, early in season 1, the bigotry and the fanaticism and the nationalism of Earth isn't cohesive. There's so many different groups. There's Home Guard. There's going to later be the stuff that's inside the government. And we even see in this episode that the Home Guard stuff was in the newspaper Garibaldi was reading. But you could say this is a story thing, but if we want to be forgiving, we could say like, isn't it interesting that the 2 guys that come on the ship that are Earth supremacists that may or may not have actually come directly from Earth government did not confer with the insider traitor that is Garibaldi's right-hand man, who we know for a fact is an insider, Earth government's traitor, racist guy. It's like, it's very interesting that early on, the racism and the bigotry and the fear of Earth is so fractured that there's multiple of these groups. All of them that seem to be tied to the government, but they're all differing and conflicting to one another. I think that's rather interesting.
Did we get confirmation on who the Knights were working for?
No. It's just like they most likely could have been a covert thing from within the government, but we never got to know.
I kind of got the well, not really the strongest of impressions, but I kind of got a little bit of an impression that they were sort of independent-ish, because one of them mentions, like, you know, I'm a patriot and I want to know the truth about this thing. It seemed very personal to him.
But he also says...
Said more of us will come for you, right?
Yeah. If I don't find these answers, more people are going to come.
See, but it's interesting. We don't get an answer for him. And I think that works in benefit of this episode's story. Because at the end, we're left with some answers, but so many are now on the table. And
perhaps you may say there is a hole in our minds as the audience.
Oh, a hole in our minds as the audience.
And we're still inside.
And we're still inside. Fuck, that's terrible.
That should have been in the season 5 opening.
Oh, that should have been in the season 5 opening, but as the last one. Perhaps we're still inside.
President
and then
Clark
some
is under
Matrix
arrest.
Glitches.
We're still inside.
We're still inside. And some glitches in the Matrix. Yeah, that would have been great. Oh, that should have been the series finale. We're still inside.
Sinclair wakes up. Oh, I was inside.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
And
Sheridan goes on.
And Garibaldi with his hair is like, Commander, why will you sleep?
No, he says, hey, Commander, and then he gets shot. And then he's like, oh no, it's happening again.
Commander, there you are. I've been looking all over the place for you.
Garibaldi? No!
No need for alarm. As you said, a simulation only. See?
How did this episode land for you as the big Sinclair episode? Because we've had previous episodes in which they've been Sinclair episodes or Sinclair-centric moments, but they're not the big, beefy, here it is, Sinclair. How did this pass for you?
It left me wanting more.
Yeah?
I was like, I want to know what really happened. I want to know why him. Like, because I felt like all of those answers were already in the world. When this episode's happening, there are people who have those answers. Like, the writers know where this is going.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to know what happened. I just want to know. And you would never give me any answers.
No, I wouldn't. Like, but, you know, upon the rewatch, what I really appreciate about this one in comparison to the conversation in Infection or the monologue in The Gathering is I really feel like we get the emotion, like full-on open door emotional weight of what's going on with Sinclair. While in the other ones, there's plenty of emotions here, but this is the one where I really feel like this is a mentally broken man. He's carrying this guilt all the time.
Yes, and I love the way that comes through in his choices in this episode and the determination that he has that's so specific to the way that Sinclair does things. Of like, he's just slowly doing the hand thing.
Yeah.
So that he can
break free.
Yeah. Which is
and he
a
quotes
very
Admiral
different.
Akbar.
It's a trap.
It's a very different way that that our orange loving commander would do things.
Sheridan would do things. It is different. I like that you know, in previous episodes it's like it's kind of hard to describe, but like something about seeing Sinclair go through the gambit of all of these emotions. Like, he's got tears in his eyes, he's angry, he's upset with himself, he's stubborn, he doesn't want to know the truth, but at the same time he needs to know it because these ghosts of the men that he lost and the fact that the Mbryo surrendered is haunting him. And I also like that for a friendly, nice protagonist character, there's something so fucking juicy about him admitting that he had a bigotry and still has one for the Mbryo.
Yeah.
Like, he has to fight within himself not to strangle them because these are the guys who massacred all of his friends.
And it wasn't a, like, oh yeah, I got over it. It was like, it took years to not want to strangle them, let alone, like, forgive them.
Yeah.
Which we get the sense that he hasn't done. He hasn't forgiven the Minbari as a race for what they did to humanity.
And although in the previous speeches that we've heard and the conversations, we knew he was a soldier, this episode really hammered in that sensation of, no, not was he just a soldier and he was there. Like, he was there. He was on the line. He was there. Not only was he just going to kill himself, and not only did he see that he was going to die, he saw, as a soldier, right in front of him, the death of the entire human race. Right in front of him, and there was nothing he could do about it. What about you, Bartek? What do you think about all this stuff? And, like, how was it for you on that first watching? Because, like you said, you saw him as, like, the smiley commander guy. And how is it also coming back and rewatching it as well, seeing, like, these layers that this episode was putting down for our main commander?
Yeah, like I said, he was, for, part of it, he was resisting the interrogations, and Night 2 wasn't really getting anywhere. Which, on the one hand, it's like, yeah, the main character's fighting alongside it, but then on the other hand, we all want the answers, so we kind of want him to succumb a little. Angry Sinclair is my favorite character, so when he started to, fold under the pressure, he was starting to woo me there. Seeing him in the flashbacks, just, watching all of his squad mates die, blow up, let's not forget that's what the title is referring to, them blowing up. All the sky was full of stars, and each one of them, was one of our ships or something.
Yeah, it was one of ours. Yeah, and also, although the monologue in The Gathering kind of gave us an understanding of the magnitude of the line, to me, when I think of the immense magnitude of the conflict that was happening and the widespread nature of the line, it's from this episode. And it all comes down to Michael O'Hare and that voice of his and those tears in his eyes and that rigid body of his standing in place and just basically saying, you weren't there. You weren't there. It's easy for you to think that we had a chance. We didn't have one, okay? And I don't know why they surrendered. Go ask them. All I can tell you is I saw that we were going to lose, and we were going to lose badly. And I think it's cool, too, that we do get footage of the stuff that you're talking about, Bartek, but just the supreme magnitude of this conflict is delivered just from Michael O'Hare's performance.
You say we could have won, but you weren't there. You didn't see them. When I looked at those ships, I didn't just see my death. I saw the death of the whole damn human race.
Then why did they surrender?
I don't know. Maybe the universe blinked. Maybe God changed his mind. All I know is that we got a second chance.
Like, you like angry Sinclair, but what about seeing vulnerable Sinclair? What do you think about that? Because angry Sinclair is fun, but he's very vulnerable here. Like I said, he's got tears in his eyes throughout a lot of scenes.
Vulnerable is an interesting word to use, because I always see this kind of strength in this character, whatever situation he's in. It's like the thing I really love about the anger, will take away, whatever jokes I was making about, like, oh, I'm really drawn to it. When he gets angry, he is still very much in character. Like, when he's in a situation where someone is against him, whether it's for a political reason or not, he will play with the letter of the law, even if it goes against the spirit of the law, that kind of thing. But when he gets angry and, just lets loose, he's still talking, complete sense. He's really laying out how he feels. I'm especially thinking about, which episode was it? It's one that comes a bit later. I think it's the one where the woman from Garibaldi's past, who's like the daughter of someone he knew, is like trying to take over the station. And like for most of it, he's like, oh, no, I'm just going to ignore that. But then when, she really starts to assert her authority, he gets angry and just like lays out like, this is why you suck. This is why, what you're doing is wrong. And it's just like, oh, okay. There's like no moral complexity there. Like Sinclair truly believes, well, not truly believes, he's really laying out what this character is. And when I see him vulnerable in this episode, it feels like he's not so much, falling victim to this guy's interrogation. It's him, like, kind of being in his own little moment, being introspective.
Taking ownership of it.
Yeah.
Like, he's grabbing this by the horns and he's taking charge of this. Like, he's still, like you said, Rachel, he's doing two things at the same time. He is taking charge of his destiny and finding out what happened, but at the same time, he's figuring out a way to get out of this interrogation.
That's
something so fucking cool.
Interesting the way that he's refusing to be a victim.
Yeah.
Because
this event made him a victim.
Yeah, and he's refusing to be a victim of night 2.
Yeah.
And he's part of the unwillingness to go there, to go to those memories, is that he doesn't want to give in to the bully.
Yeah, and also, it's a victimhood complex in a way, too, of he doesn't like the fact that he was made to
so
be
much
in this
survivor's
situation.
guilt.
Survivor's guilt, because in a few episodes' time, he will open up to Garibaldi and say, look, I've been holding on to this. I have the pieces. Could you actually help me with this? Because I realize I can't do it on my own, and I shouldn't be doing it on my own. This is bigger than myself.
Which is a nice callback to the situation when Garibaldi is having to call Sinclair out for being dangerous and endangering himself.
Yeah.
In the guise of it's for duty.
I love Sinclair's as a multitasking commander. Like I said, you get caught up in, if this was a traditionally written story, it would be the interrogator interrogates him, he finds out secrets, they're about to find out the big secret, and then Garibaldi and crew burst through the door and find him. That's how this would traditionally be done. But instead, Sinclair is like, I'll go along with this until I can strike and escape myself. Isn't it?
Yeah. I'm not going to wait to be rescued. I know that they're going to be coming for me, but I'm going to do what I need to do too. I'm not just going to wait. I'm not going to be passive in this situation.
I know it's a very simple thing to say from a critical standpoint, but Sinclair is a badass. It's just as simple as that. I said to Bartek this when he first watched it. I said, I think you could tell what my favorite moment is, and Bartek, you nailed it, which is when he punches Night 2, and then he's like, well, looks like the pain is real for the both of us, huh? And then he's working out ways how he could do it again. Angry Sinclair, multitasking Sinclair. I think it's just he's got a lot of complexities going on that people take for granted. I think people fall for his zen nature. Sinclair has this, like you said, smiling, calm demeanor. But when you actually peel away that veneer that's actually quite thin, there's a lot of gears moving with this character. And this is what this episode is about. This is opening up the character and looking at all of the gears moving.
And there's a specific way that I really like how they show that. And it's just kind of built into the episode. And I didn't really think of it in this way. And I don't know if you guys will agree. But that kind of idea of him multitasking on working on all of these levels, you get in this episode, I think, more of an appreciation of him as a commander doing everything from the massive thing to the minute thing.
Yeah.
And everything in between. And that's just part of his day. And he deals with it. And he does it over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Rather than it being this is the problem of the moment. It's just okay, well, we've got to keep an eye out on this. And we're doing that. And we've got to manage this. He is the director of the whole station, and you really get that sense from him in this episode of like he's having all of these responsibilities and all of these things are weighing on him.
But he takes it in stride.
Yeah, as well as like his past and how he's trying to just accept what happened as he knows it.
And move on.
But after he gets like that little extra piece, he's like, I can't ignore this anymore.
Yeah.
Like, he really means it when he only really started to question it in the moment that Minbari said that to him.
Yeah. Yeah. From then he was repressing it, and he said it as much to Carolyn in that pilot movie. You touched upon something that's interesting here, and I think it's something that I like about Sinclair is he believes in the mission statement of Babylon 5 wholeheartedly, and he takes management very seriously, and that's what makes him different to Sheridan. When Sheridan first comes onto Babylon 5, he really does not want to do all of these tasks because he's a captain. He's an explorer. He's a military captain.
Yeah, and then that is what Sinclair was to start with. And Night 2 asks him, like, what changed?
Yeah, what changed? You were going to be admiral one day. And
like, you were following this very clear linear path that your father had done, your grandfather had done, and it had gone all the way back, right?
My theory is, my perspective, and I'd love Bartek to comment upon this, is Sinclair, after this incident at the war, was basically kicked down the ranks of importance because people suspected he had some collusion, which we see here.
They didn't trust him anymore.
While Sheridan is the exact opposite. He's a war-decorated hero. He's like, the few, if only, people who have actually destroyed a Minbari ship. And so I think, like, when Sinclair is offered this position, he takes it with utmost sincerity and respect because this is a break for him. While Sheridan is put there for a covert operation to begin with, and then is stuck there for a while. Even like season 3, there's an episode where it opens up with Sheridan listening to like some trade union agreements, and he's just like bored out of his mind.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, fuck off with this shit.
And I love Sheridan.
I shouldn't be dealing with this.
And he grows into that, but I think Sinclair walked into it being like, this is my break, and I'm going to do the best and show everyone that I'm better than they think I am.
But then I also question it because we see Sinclair at least a year into doing the job. Do you think that changes things, Bartek?
The year being in the Gathering?
Yeah, like they've already been running the station for at least a year before we meet Sinclair.
And this is then first season's his second year.
Yeah, that maybe we just miss his teething period of dealing with the administration shit.
Oh, it's possible. I can't say I really thought that far ahead, but definitely, I remember when I started season 2 and, Sheridan came in, considering that the situation in real life was that they needed to change, main actors and main characters and somehow make the story still work. They were pretty open about, pointing out the fact that the main guy was gone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there were characters asking Sheridan, so how long are you gonna, be around for? There seems to be a history of people just, leaving Babylon 5. So the show really does, kind of draw attention to the fact that Sheridan, and by Sheridan I mean Sinclair, really owned this role as being the commander of Babylon 5. So it's, yeah.
Yeah, and they draw attention to those two characters, Sheridan, Sinclair. They're different characters. They have different leadership styles. They have different interests as leaders. And that is what makes the two characters both very fun, because you knew and Rachel knew that Sinclair only lasted this season. And so when you did watch this big Sinclair episode, Rachel, you said it did affect you knowing that he wasn't going to be here by the end of the season. So the viewing of it kind of had a weird effect where you're like, well, this has to matter more, but I don't know how.
And what could have been as well, because when you're watching it for the first time, knowing that, you're like, well, I wonder what they were originally planning and how they're going to change this.
Or the big one, will this matter?
Yeah.
Will this matter?
Will they just throw this out?
Yeah. What about you, Bartek? When you were watching this episode, you did know that he left the show. Did you have these kind of lingering feelings?
Well, you're leaving out my very specific thing of what I thought I knew, which was I forgot that he was only going to be the main character of season 1. I was convinced for some reason that he was the main character in seasons 1 and 2.
Right.
So I was preparing myself for, we're not even, we're barely over a quarter of the way through Sinclair main character time.
Right.
So I was very much holding on to all these details and hoping for more. And I do remember telling you that, like, when I was finishing season 1 and just thinking about, like, that last scene I saw with him, that didn't feel conclusive, and I have to, let go of this already. And that was when I started to, like, have that panic of, like, oh God, I was holding on to all this. I know that he's going to be a guest role, in the future, but, like, there hasn't been time for me to adjust to the fact that, the focus of the show is going to change.
How can they give me answers to all of these questions when he's not the main character anymore?
And it's not just answers. It's resolution.
Yeah, rounding out his arc.
What is it they don't want me to remember? I have to find out.
Do you think that, like, when you revisit this and when you were just watching and you finally finished all the Sinclair stuff, were you satisfied? Did you feel like things paid off, including this episode? Did you feel like that panic that you were worrying about was actually defeated? Or do you think that it was in parts or such and such? How do you guys land?
Maybe in part I would have, still wanted a bit more, but when I did see the conclusion, I was very satisfied with it. It was not only, a firm conclusion, but it was also, in a satisfying duology of episodes.
Yeah. Rachel?
I think for me, just for my own peace of mind, mostly, I'm like, I don't want to imagine it another way.
Yeah.
This is what we were given. This is where everything lands. And it feels like it's a nice balance between chaotic and planned.
Yeah.
Of, like, yes, life got in the way of the show being made.
Mm.
And then that had to alter things that were in the world of the show. But I choose to view it as like, well, that just makes it more authentic, because it's just like, well, like, yeah, not everything is laid out really from the beginning and goes exactly from A to B.
Some stuff had to get transferred into other areas.
I like the way that the journey was adjusted as you go along it.
I have had very complicated feelings with it because, like I said, I've stuck with that for this first season for 3, maybe 4 years on its own. And there came a point where I knew he wasn't going to be in the second season, third season. My parents said, don't worry, they wrap out his story. But I gained this perspective after some point of he's just a placeholder. And so when I did get the satisfaction of the resolution, I took it for granted. Again, took it for granted that we got a satisfying resolution for what was the main character, and I was but I was more excited by we got an answer to the Babylon 4 mystery. And then the other thing that makes this complicated is, until recent times, most, if not all, viewers didn't know why the actor left the show.
Yeah.
It was all, lips moving and gossip, and the actor hated the show and he didn't want to be on it, or they wanted a pretty boy, or they wanted a more famous actor, or he was a terrible actor and they had to get rid of him. Whatever it was, that
or the studio said
wanted something else, and or the ratings, or whatever it is. So I also had that of blocking my appreciation for the fact that this stuff does matter.
Yeah.
Even outside of Sinclair's final resolution in the Babylon Squared episodes, the Babylon 4 episodes, stuff from his story things that he did that affected other characters still progress throughout the show, even though he is physically not there to be there to do those things. His impact, his legacy, and all of that stuff, the way he inspired his crew, linger throughout the show. There are those moments where the show won't explicitly say, but you'll be reminded, that's right, Sinclair made that happen. That's right, Sinclair did that. And I've taken that in stride far more, and I'm happy when I watch an episode like this that it does get an answer. That there are things here, because especially like in modern television shows, they get cancelled, or they're embarrassed and they just erase it and they don't talk about it again, or their Star Trek Discovery, in which they have a short attention span and don't think about the past. The thing is, this was a show from the 1990s. Bartek, you watched this in the matter of, let's be generous and say 4 months, right? You got to see this answered and followed through upon relatively quickly. This was a show that was demanding you to play the long game for 5 whole years, and for this one, for 3 years. And that's like fucking ballsy. But the fact that it actually does pay off makes it feel like, for people like us who are short-time viewers, like people like you guys who are like short-time viewers in terms of you consumed it quickly, and for people like me who are longer ones, who had to wait and consume it for a longer period of time, it's satisfying because it didn't waste our time.
No.
I walk away going, we can watch episodes like this and don't feel like they're this anomaly that don't make sense and that they're just spinning wheels and they're time wasters or wasted potential.
Yeah.
I cherish these type of things because there are a lot of shows that I love and a lot of shows that I hate that drop the ball like that. And Babylon 5, 9 times out of 10, follows through. And that is something to really cherish here.
What happened at the Battle of the Line? Don't you want to know? Just for yourself? Don't you want to know?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Then go. Look. See.
Did you consider what the antagonist was propositioning, like what was proposing here? Did you ever consider that Sinclair's missing time actually could have been something in which he was a double agent or a colluder or anything like that?
I was like, oh, well, maybe... I was like, maybe if it was more clear that, like, the Mbryo... Maybe if we knew at that stage that the Mbryo did have telepaths.
Well, we know all of the races except for the Nandu.
Yeah, but we haven't seen a Mbryo telepath, so it's like not like you're like, oh, they must have, but we haven't seen them and seen their powers, so it's just like
At this stage, yeah.
Oh well, maybe he could have had a block put in, but you're just like, no. I was just like, no. Sinclair's Sinclair, and it would take a lot more than 24 hours to change who this man is.
Didn't for Garibaldi.
No, because they manipulated what was already there.
Yeah.
And it's
That's
just
true.
like when the Mbryo took him, all he had was hatred. And that's not what he has now.
And fear.
Yeah.
What about you, Bartek? Did you ever consider...
Yes, I did, for sure. I thought that there was definitely something on a subconscious level that Delenn did to him. Because it's this weird thing of, like, as Rachel said earlier, Delenn is shady as fuck in season 1. But she is a main character, and she has a lot of, you know, kind of heartwarming, tender moments. Like in episode 1, she's watching Duck Dodgers with Garibaldi. There's the ending of The Gathering where they're having a conversation about like the nature of humanity, or humans. So there was always this idea in my head of like, okay, Delenn's good, but there's something, you know, going on the side, but whatever that something is, surely there is, you know, some sort of good intention there. And, because there was such a strong emphasis on this kind of more personal relationship between Sinclair and Delenn, whether that was going to lead to romance or not, I did think that perhaps there was something going on that would have inclined Sinclair to, get along with Delenn a bit more than just the passing of time or something like that. Something subconscious that he wouldn't have been aware of.
Yeah. I never assumed that it was the case because he was our main character, and I just didn't think they would do that. And also, the way his character is constructed and it being this mystery, I don't think from a viewer standpoint, maybe from a writing standpoint, from a viewer standpoint, it would be satisfying that he investigates his own missing time just to uncover himself that he is in fact a double agent. That could be interesting, but I didn't believe that they would do that here.
I never thought he was a double agent, just that there was something,
Yeah, and when it comes to the Delenn stuff, I think there's this interesting wrinkle where I think a part of it, at least for myself, is I'm inclined to think that she's a lot nicer because she's the spiritual lady of the show. And so I'm inclined to be well, she's sensible and nice and she must have good intentions, but throughout the show, even in episodes you just discussed or moments, there have always been an undercut moment of, but she has a secret, sinister, or could be a secret and sinister agenda. She's on purposely misleading people, hiding people. In The Gathering, she plays her hand with her gravity rings, which never came back, against Jakar, right? And stuff like that is what always was an underpinning of there's something far more sinister here. But the thing that makes you like her, at least fools me, the religious spirituality thing and the connotations that come with that, with how she's presented. She's never presented as a zealot. So I think of her as a good person, is actually the answer. The actual answer is, because she's a religious person, this is what the answer is. Because of her spirituality, this is why they surrendered the war. This is why they this is why they let Sinclair go and put Sinclair on the ship and have been guiding him. Because they believe him to be Valen. They know him to be Valen. They have evidence of it. Yeah. And they are aware, they're aware that the human spirit is the same as theirs. And I think that is something really fun on the watching of it. And I was curious to know, too, were you guys satisfied with the actual answer of why they took Sinclair and let him go and why they surrendered the war? Because that's what this episode's all about, is what happened on the line. We get an answer to what happened on the line.
That he was taken.
No, but in the show, as a whole show, when you go back and watch this is interrogating that and we don't get an answer. You guys were saying, I would have liked to have known the answer. We do get to find out the answer. Were you guys satisfied with that?
With the answer about discovering the Mbryo souls inside a human?
Yeah. And
I was.
Yeah, and where that all leads?
Yeah.
I remember in season 2, when Lanier sat down and explained it, I was pissed the fuck off. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Because also Sinclair wasn't there to hear this story. And I was like, what are you talking about? I completely think that this is stupid. They would end their war because they think we have their souls. I know they believe in this. I was so pissed off. And I remember the exact moment in which I was on board, which is when the character of Naroon heard about why they quit the war, and he had my reaction. And I'm like, oh good, this isn't a show in which the entire race of people believe this thing. There are people who are like me who go, wait a moment, are you telling me we ended a military conflict because we think they're us? And that's when I flipped on it, that exact moment, because this show's really good coming at things from all of these different perspectives that you and the characters may have when viewing the show and participating in the story. And so when I do go back and watch this episode, and I'm very satisfied to know that, they let him go because they think their souls are in the human bodies, and they know this guy to be their Jesus figure. So they're going to craft him to be Valen because they know him to be Valen. Yeah. It's kind of rad.
Commander, Out of curiosity, do you remember anything from your experience?
No. Sorry. Not a thing.
I think it's time to do our Actors Spotlight, in which we talk about an actor that was in this episode. We talk about them as a performer within the episode, if we've seen them in anything else, all of this type of stuff. We're going to be talking about the actor of Night 2.
Mm-hmm.
Rachel, who's this person?
Christopher Neame.
Neame. And have you guys, seen him in anything else when you looked over his stuff? Is there anything of note for you, Bartek? I know there have been some B5 actors we've talked about. You look them up, you're like, they're a voice in this thing I know, or they actually have appeared. There's actually been quite a few actors. I was surprised that you were like, I've actually encountered this person in other things, and I may not have known it. Anything with this guy?
Yeah. No.
So, nothing with him, huh? He's like
Nothing at all.
You mean that you haven't seen It's All Relative?
I looked over his filmography like twice on 2 different websites. I could not find a single thing.
That's such a shame, because you'll all be happy to hear I know him from Star Trek episodes.
Yeah.
He was in Enterprise as our favorite type of thing, Bartek, a Nazi general.
Mm-hmm.
Who would have guessed this blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy could play a Nazi?
Who would have seen it coming?
But the most important thing to note down, and this blew my mind. Like, I was sitting in my chair in my spare room, and I was just casually looking at his IMDb, being like, I'm sure I'll see something. And then I saw he was in an episode of Star Trek Voyager.
Yeah.
And it was an episode where the Doctor gets trapped in he has to go inside of a holodeck program to save people, and it's a Beowulf story, and he's in that episode. And then I saw a name I'm familiar with, a face on IMDb I'm familiar with, as the character of Freya. Number 1 from Babylon 5 is in that episode. The leader of the Mars Resistance group, who would later become the chief security person for the Interstellar Alliance. So that actress and this guy were both in the same episode of Star Trek Voyager, and I was just so ecstatic to see that. Like, I was like, oh, B5 people in the same thing. Like, these two never interacted B5, but it was, I get a kick out of that type of things. Like, ooh, these little connections. Like, ooh, these two were in the same little project. It was quite neat, but outside of that, not that much.
He's done a mix of TV and film, mostly TV, and a lot of sci-fi scattered throughout the decades.
Yeah, he's been like a villain in like a gajillion sci-fi things.
He was born in 1947.
I thought you were going to say in England. I was like, yeah.
English actor. He's currently got 101 credits, and his first credit was No Blades of Grass, which
was it an English thing?
Came out in 1970.
Cool.
And I liked that he was in one-off episodes of various sitcoms, or
I can't imagine him in a sitcom. Like, he looks like a villain.
Sitcoms / soaps, because he was in an episode of Benson.
Ooh.
And I believe it was a few episodes of Days of Our Lives.
Oh, now that I can see this guy's a soap opera guy.
And there is a connection to a film that you have done.
Oh, on the pond.
On Spit and Polish.
Ooh, what one?
Oh, that's mine.
That's yours.
Yeah. So it's not a film that you have done, but it's connected to the world of a movie that you have done.
Oh, I'm scared now.
So it's from Unappreciated Masterpieces,
which is our show where we did commentary tracks, yeah.
Stage.
So what was this? I'm excited. I'm keen.
So he was in the film Boris and Natasha as fearless leader.
Oh yeah, I did see that.
He was in Rocky.
Not that I've seen it, but I read that.
He was in a Rocky.
My big question is, was he the first method actor to play a cartoon?
You know that was De Niro. You know it was De Niro.
Also, it was a TV movie, Ryan, so we wouldn't have done
So
it.
for a TV movie, was he the first method actor to play a cartoon?
That probably so.
I don't know what that means.
Oh, you still haven't figured it out?
I was like, I would have It's literally been...
What does it look? I can't imagine Marlon Brando doing it. So, what did we think of this guy in this episode? Because the most interesting thing to note down was this was originally written for Walter Koenig to play, but he had a heart attack. I mentioned this in the previous episode, so he couldn't play it, and then they gave him the role of Mr. Bester instead. What did we think of this guy, though? What did we think of his performance? He's like the main guy facing off against Sinclair. He has to do a lot of the heavy lifting as well. What did you think of this guy, Bartek?
Yeah, again, having rewatched it and comparing it to like the later interrogation episodes, it was very different, but the actor still very much had this like cold demeanor about him, which was really cool to see. Because the other ones, I guess they had a bit more like, psychological expertise going on. This character, he had the performance.
Yeah, I love this guy's performance.
Yeah, he rocks it for me.
This guy has to carry off some lines that in anyone else's hands could fail. There are so many lines he spouts off here, like that when all the lights are turning off and he's like, you could be in heaven, you could be in hell, you could be blah. And there's like, the only thing that's true is that you're locked in here with me. And I was fist pumping when he was doing that because I was like, this guy's fucking bringing the cheese. And sometimes that's good. You need someone to be campy. And this guy was very camp, but in a good way. Did I ever find him menacing? No. I found him enjoyable. Mm-hmm. Yes. And that can be a good thing because a boring villain is very bad. And B5 is filled with many of them.
Yeah.
But this guy's one of the first memorable villains, along with Mr. Bester and the Soul Hunter, because there's this actor standing there delivering these lines with this utmost like sincerity and energy. I really noticed that he did something. I was like, why is he doing this? He would be breathing like he was running out of breath. Like when he was talking, he was like, and I was like, why is he doing that? And then I realized it's because his character is doing two things at once. Like, he is operating and sorting out the machine along with his fellow knight in our world, and he's operating inside the mental state as well. And so I took it like it's kind of like physically taxing on him, which I found quite interesting. And performance-wise, I like that weird little touch. Also, it just the shakiness of his breathing made him unsettling in some ways, just like this isn't right, and it added to this panicked nature of these two knights, because we said this, they aren't as impactful as professional as the other interrogators we will see. These guys have come aboard the ship. They've got a time limit. There's people looking for the commander, and they don't actually seem like they're professional interrogators.
No.
They just seem like they really want to know the answer. And so the shakiness in this actor's breath really delivered this without the dialogue having to do the work.
Yeah, I agree. I really enjoy the performance, even though he's never menacing to me.
Yeah.
It's because he's never a physical threat to Sinclair. I think that's a part of it for me.
I mean, he gets his ass kicked by Sinclair.
Yeah.
No, his stomach punched.
Yeah, you're right.
It's only...
and then his mind fucking pulverized.
What can he make Sinclair do to himself? That's the question that this character revolves around. It's not oh my, what is he gonna do? Like, they cheese it up, and it's like, this might kill him.
Yeah.
Or when, like, Knight 2 himself is like, oh, even if you die.
Yeah, and I also appreciate acting-wise, you do see a very subtle, at least I do, I don't know if you guys do as well, but we could talk about it, a subtle flip in his intensity once he starts to realize that Sinclair doesn't know.
Yeah.
And he starts to, like I say, play it more like he's this guide character. And I like the smooth transition performance-wise from doing that, because he's still clearly an antagonistic character, but now he, like the audience, is actually invested in the answer, and he wants Sinclair to genuinely be invested, whether it's for a sinister reason like you bestow, Rachel, or whether it's for a more sincere reason like I do, in terms of like, I just want this guy seems like a victim too, I just want to know. That kind of stuff is interesting. Anything you want to say about this guy's performance, Bartek? Anything you kind of noticed or appreciated or didn't like?
I'm starting to realize why you didn't like his last line, Ryan.
Yeah.
It's because he wasn't doing the heavy breathing, so obviously he wasn't inside.
He wasn't inside. That's it. Bartek cracked
it's like
it.
they weren't trying to hide it, so it's like, well, no. Yeah, it's so obvious.
It's so obvious.
This is the author looking for a button for the scene. Maybe you're still inside. I apologize for that. It's a tad overdone, shall we say. I need something to go out with.
I think, unless anything else wants to be said here, I think we can move on to the next episode of A Babylon 5.
On the next Babylon 5.
You guys are talking about episode 9, Deathwalker. Extradite her for trial. Better yet, some say kill her on the spot. Passions run high with the arrival of the war criminal known as Deathwalker. She's biochemist Jadul, Sarah Douglas, whose discovery of an immortality potion came via sadistic experimentation of Narns and other aliens. Yeah, that's right. There was an immortality potion at one point, wasn't there?
Right.
The Vorlon said we weren't ready for it yet.
Yeah.
We haven't said two important words.
Oh, do you give this episode a yum?
Yum
or
yum.
Yum yum. Where do you land, Bartek? Yum being bad or yum yum being good?
Well, I give it a yum yum.
Yum yum.
You know what? I've got some of this episode still on my lips. It's a yum yum from me too.
Yum yum.
But what about this? You're giving it a yum yum?
Yeah, I said yum yum.
I just want to clarify.
Yum yum.
Yeah, and Ryan, are you giving it a yum yum?
I give it a yum yum for good. This is just so I have more excuses to keep using the hard cut of her saying yum yum after we give it.
Yum yum.
I'm trying to move on again.
Choo choo.
Oh, one thing though.
Yeah.
I give it a yum yum.
Yum yum.
I'm keen. Are you keen on Deathwalker, Ryan?
I don't want to give too much away, but this particular episode, Deathwalker, does have one of the most bizarre, what the fuck, fucking crazy B plots out there. That is, Ambassador Kosh wants to hang out with Talia Winters and his good friend Mr. Abbott and drink Jovian sunspots and talk nonsense.
Well,
I'm looking
Kosh
forward to that.
doesn't drink the sunspots.
No. He's there
Abbott does.
He's there for the hour of scampering.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that fucking B plot.
Like,
That
it really,
fucking
there's a really sharp increase in the Kosh action next episode.
I know, Bartek's weeping because Kosh was always one of your favorite characters. Bartek would come to me week to week telling me I didn't see Kosh or I got some Kosh action. And then I said to you, Bartek, at one point, there's going to be an episode where he does so much stuff that somebody remarks, he's been a busy boy today. And that's Deathwalker.
Yeah.
Yes.
Third best character.
Third best.
Mm-hmm.
And who's the second?
Come on, Ryan, you know who it is. I had a nickname for him.
Tell us, the audience.
My bug man.
Nagrath. Everyone loves
Listen.
Kosh, Nagrath, then
Sinclair.
From 3 to 1,
Yeah.
Listen, there is a video on YouTube called R.I.P. Nagrath. When I found that video, it had about 75 views. When I watched it again the other day, it had about 76. And that's bullshit because it should be at least 90, considering how many times I've watched it.
But maybe it's just because you've watched it too many times in one day.
My favorite fact is Bartek waited till like the end of the show to watch it because he's like, I don't want to get spoiled. And
I had that description in my head the whole time because it ends with "Rest easy, King."
and then you watched it, and it's like the shitty shit post.
It's not shitty, it's sad. Didn't you hear the guy crying?
Many complications. Price high.
I'll pay for it.
It's been a blast talking B5. You can find our baby boy Bartek over at the Spit and Polish Presents podcast. Bartek, where can people find that podcast?
Oh, I can just, copy paste what I say in our episodes. You can find me on Twitter at Spit and Polish Presents. My Facebook page, Spit and Polish Presents also. You can email me at spitandpolished@gmail.com, and you can rate and review me on all the podcatchers that allow it.
Yep.
And we're the exact same. We're on all of those social medias, Reddit, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, whatever.
YumYumPod or YumPodcast.
We have an email as well, in which you can email us over your thoughts, questions, queries, concerns, or whatever you feel like at yumyumpod@gmail.com. You should rate and review us. Unfortunately, last I checked, I went onto Apple Podcasts, I went onto Podchaser, I went onto iHeartRadio, I went onto the Spanish streaming site.
You were hunting for them.
There's been no change to their rating systems. They still go by 5-star rules. They haven't changed it to the Yum or Yum Yum rules. And I've written letters. I send pigeons. They didn't have letters. I just sent them. And they haven't changed it. So you should make that happen by giving us what their equivalent of Yum Yum is, which is 5-star reviews, and make sure to put in there, in some way, shape, or form, change the ratings to Yum or Yum Yum, or hashtag change the rating to Yum or Yum Yum. We have our Patreon as well, in which we provide extra content for money, and you can support us on there. We have discussions of Star Trek movies, the best and worst rated episodes of Star Trek, and we give our general thoughts on other pieces of media, movies, TV shows, video games, podcasts. I mean, way back in the day, before we really confirmed in our brains and said, when Star Trek Discovery is done, what do we move on to? We actually did 2 episodes on Babylon 5 because it was just too much to talk about. So you can go back in time and hear us try to condense our thoughts down into 2 1-hour episodes if you really want. Bartek, thanks so much for coming on. I'm glad that you joined us here, and I'm glad that you just checked out Babylon 5. As someone who's a fan of the show, and many people will have this experience.
And years of personally trying to peer pressure him into watching it.
Subtle peer pressure. I didn't hand him the DVD and say watch it, and then he thumped it. And do not thump the DVD of Babylon 5. It's sacrilegious. It's just, as a fan of the show, many people listening will know this. It's always just nice when somebody actually just watches the show, because it is a very underseen show.
You want to share it because you love it so much.
I want to share the word of Babylon 5. But thanks.
Ryan? Bartek? Good eating to you.
Oh, good eating to you, Rachel.
Thanks for having me, guys. I've already gotten my revenge seed against Ryan. He's going to watch Nichijou, so look forward to Yum Yum Nichijou. Good eating to you all.